Some days you just want to run a simple errand without feeling like you stumbled into a reality show about entitled people. It was a sunny afternoon, one of those rare quiet times when the Target parking lot wasn't a zoo of shopping carts and cranky kids. I had been looking forward to this particular outing more than usual, mainly because after weeks stuck at home recovering from foot surgery, even a trip to buy groceries felt like a mini vacation. A month prior, I'd managed to injure my foot and ankle badly enough that I needed surgery, which landed me with a temporary handicap placard. I hated needing it, but it made life so much easier when I had to go out. So on this fine afternoon, I pulled into the lot, expecting to find a couple of the designated spots open and breeze right in. But instead, I pulled up to find something that made me stop and just stare. There, stretched out horizontally across 3 handicap spaces, was a shiny Porsche SUV.
No placard.
No special tags. Just brazen entitlement in the form of a luxury car. It wasn't just that the driver had parked over the lines. He'd managed to angle the thing so that every bit of the space was blocked, like he wanted to make absolutely sure nobody else could park within 20 feet of his precious vehicle. And to really top it off, the passenger side window was rolled down. Not just cracked, but all the way open, like an invitation. I sat there in my car for a moment, foot throbbing, trying to decide whether to just park farther away and hobble across the lot or let myself be annoyed. After weeks of using a cane and trying to get by without making a fuss, I felt something click into place in my head. Nope, I wasn't going to let this go. I'd love to say this was the first time I'd seen someone act like the rules of basic decency didn't apply to them, but unfortunately, that would be a lie. I'd lived in this area long enough to know there's always that person. Someone who thinks their time, convenience, or self-importance justifies making life harder for everyone else. But there was something extra infuriating about the sight of that sleek Porsche hogging not just 1 but 3 handicap spots. Maybe it was because I'd spent the past several weeks learning exactly how exhausting it is to navigate everyday errands when you can't walk properly. Maybe it was because I'd watched countless people glance at my cane and either pity me or look away. Or maybe it was simply because after being stuck in my house for so long, I didn't have the patience left to swallow my irritation. Whatever the reason, my annoyance flared up fast. I pulled into the next closest spot that wasn't reserved and carefully stepped out of the car, feeling my foot protest the extra steps. As I limped past the Porsche, I couldn't help but glance inside. The seats were spotless cream leather, the console gleaming in the sunlight, and that wide-open window just sitting there like an invitation. I shook my head, trying to focus on the fact that I had a shopping list and only so much stamina. But in the back of my mind, I kept picturing whoever owned this car. Someone so entitled they didn't think twice about making it harder for people with actual mobility issues to park. Someone so arrogant they'd leave their window open like they had nothing to fear. I thought about what would happen if someone with worse luck than me came along. Someone who needed that spot even more than I did. Someone who wouldn't be able to hobble in from halfway across the lot. It made my blood boil a little hotter. And it wasn't just me. As I got closer to the store entrance, I passed a couple quietly shaking their heads. Unbelievable, the woman muttered. The man sighed. People have no shame. I caught their eye and nodded, feeling a strange solidarity in our shared disgust. Maybe a few months ago I would have just vented internally and moved on. But there's something about recovering from an injury that makes you a little less willing to let selfishness slide. As I picked up a basket, I felt the beginnings of an idea start to take shape. Nothing destructive, nothing criminal, just a little reminder that other people existed, and that sometimes your actions have consequences. I spent the first 15 minutes inside Target trying to talk myself out of doing anything. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that the best thing I could do was grab my groceries, go home, and let the universe sort out the Porsche driver's karma. But every aisle I turned down, I thought about that window left wide open, as if the owner believed their car deserved some kind of invisible bubble of protection from the consequences of being a jerk. I thought about how it had been for me, trying to get around after my surgery, how even little errands became ordeals. And here was this person taking up spaces meant for people like me, like it was their birthright. At some point between the cereal aisle and the cleaning supplies, my irritation evolved into something more focused. I wasn't going to key the car. I wasn't going to do any real damage. But I did want to make a point. Something annoying enough that they might think twice before pulling that stunt again. I pushed my cart to the side and mentally weighed my options. There were plenty of petty ideas, but most of them would have required more planning, and a level of malice I didn't quite have in me. Then, as I passed a display of potting soil, the thought clicked into place so perfectly I nearly laughed out loud. Dirt. Plain, ordinary dirt. Harmless, easily brushed away, but messy enough to create a scene. And combined with that open window, it would feel just inconvenient enough to get under this guy's skin. I could picture it. Him marching back to his precious Porsche, expecting it to be untouched, only to find the passenger seat dusted with soil and gravel like some raccoon had gone exploring. It was exactly the blend of low stakes and high irritation that felt right. The best part? If anyone asked, I could say I hadn't seen anything. Maybe I just noticed the window and mentioned it to the front desk out of concern. No harm done. Just a small, satisfying reminder that when you inconvenience others, sometimes the universe or an annoyed stranger sends a little inconvenience right back. With that decision made, I finished my shopping with a lighter step, well, as light as my recovering foot would allow. After I finished checking out, I made my way back through the sliding doors, feeling my heart pick up speed just a little. It wasn't that I was scared, I wasn't doing anything destructive, but there was still that little thrill you get when you're about to do something a bit mischievous. The parking lot was still pretty empty, sun glinting off the Porsche like it was posing for a car commercial. I took a slow look around to make sure no one was watching too closely. Then I walked over to a patch of landscaping gravel near the edge of the lot. Just ordinary, dusty bits of rock and dirt where the curb met the grass. I crouched down carefully, balancing my weight on my good foot, and scooped up a handful of the loose gravel and dry soil. Nothing too heavy, just enough to make a statement. When I straightened up, I felt a little surge of adrenaline. This was it. I approached the passenger side of the Porsche, where the window gaped open like an invitation. For half a second I hesitated. Was this too petty? But then I remembered how it had felt, hobbling across the lot, watching the owner's entitlement sprawl across 3 handicap spaces without a care. And I knew I wouldn't regret it. With a small, satisfied flick of my wrist, I sprinkled the dirt and gravel across the cream leather seat. I didn't dump it. I didn't grind it in. Just a delicate little coating like a finishing touch. It was harmless. Messy but harmless. Exactly the point. I brushed my hands off, took one last look to be sure it wasn't obvious from a distance, and turned toward the store entrance. Because the second part of my plan required a little help. I walked back in and approached the front desk, keeping my expression perfectly neutral. "Hi," I said. "I'm not sure if this is an emergency, but I thought I should mention. I think I saw a raccoon crawl into that Porsche out front." The woman behind the counter blinked. "A raccoon?" I nodded, as serious as I could manage. "It was climbing in through the open window. I just thought someone should know." Within seconds, she was picking up the intercom microphone, her voice echoing across the store. "Attention Target shoppers. Would the owner of the Porsche parked in the handicap spots please come to the front desk? We believe there may be an animal inside your vehicle." I thanked her and stepped aside, trying not to grin. Then I found a spot near the carts where I could see without being too obvious. And I waited. It didn't take long. Maybe 2 minutes after the announcement, the automatic doors whooshed open and a man came barreling out. He was exactly what you'd picture. Designer sunglasses, polo shirt, the kind of swagger that said he expected everyone to move out of his way. I watched him scan the parking lot, his head whipping side to side, until he spotted his car. He broke into a half jog, calling over his shoulder to no one in particular. "If there's a raccoon in there, I'm gonna sue somebody." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. He skidded to a stop next to the Porsche and practically dove through the open window, inspecting the seat. From where I stood, I could see him freeze as he realized the dirt and gravel were real, but the raccoon was not. He jerked upright, spinning around like he expected to see the animal scampering away. Nothing. Just the quiet parking lot and a couple of curious shoppers walking by, trying to figure out why a grown man was yelling at an empty car. I heard him muttering curses under his breath as he started brushing the dirt out with his bare hands, which only smeared it deeper into the upholstery. By this point, the front desk employee had come out with a big biker-looking security guard trailing behind her. "Sir," she called, keeping a polite distance. "Did you find the animal?" He turned to her, face flushed and scowling. "There's no damn raccoon," he snapped. "Somebody must have thought they were funny." The security guard crossed his arms. "That's so?" he rumbled. "Well, while we're here, mind explaining why you're parked across 3 handicap spaces without a placard?" The man's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out for a few seconds. Then he blurted, "I was only going to be a minute." The security guard didn't look impressed. "Doesn't matter," he said evenly. "You're blocking access for people who actually need those spots. Gonna need to see your ID." "I'm not giving you anything," the man shot back. "This is harassment." The guard didn't move. "I'm calling parking enforcement," he said. "Stay here." He pulled out his phone and stepped away to make the call. The man looked like he was about to explode. He tried to argue with the front desk lady, but she only shrugged and said, "Store policy. You're not allowed to park like that." After a few more minutes of increasingly frantic muttering and dramatic arm waving, a marked city vehicle rolled up, lights flashing. An officer stepped out and approached the Porsche with a pad of tickets in hand. I watched, half hidden behind the cart corral, as the man's expression shifted from indignation to something almost like panic. He tried to protest again, but the officer held up a hand. "Sir, you're parked illegally, and you're causing a disturbance," he said calmly. "You can argue about it in court if you like." It was beautiful. Somewhere during this spectacle, a store manager appeared and quietly informed him he was banned from that target for his behavior. The man sputtered, demanded names and badge numbers, and finally stomped back to his Porsche, brushing the last bits of dirt off the seat. When he drove away, still blocking half the aisle as he went, I finally let out the laugh I'd been holding in. I hadn't planned any of this when I left my house that day, but watching that perfect chain of consequences unfold was better than anything I could have scripted. When the Porsche finally disappeared around the corner of the lot, I felt something I hadn't expected, a kind of peaceful satisfaction. Not because I'd ruined anyone's day. Nothing that dramatic had happened. No real damage, no lasting harm. Just a gentle reminder that when you act like the world revolves around you, sometimes it pushes back. I limped back to my car, feeling the familiar twinge in my foot, but also a little lighter than when I'd arrived. I knew there would be people who'd think it was petty, who would say I should have just ignored it and gone about my business. But after weeks of struggling to do simple things, of needing that handicap placard just to get in and out of a store, I'd stopped caring quite so much about appearing nice. I'd learned that there are moments when letting something slide only guarantees it will happen again. And in this case, a little dirt and an imaginary raccoon felt like the perfect way to draw a line in the sand without crossing any real ones. I thought about how many times in life I'd swallowed my irritation to avoid making a scene. How many times I'd convinced myself it wasn't worth it to say something or push back. But that day reminded me that standing up for yourself doesn't always have to be loud or confrontational. Sometimes, it's as simple as sprinkling a little gravel and letting the entitled person create their own spectacle. As I pulled out of my parking space, carefully within the lines, I took one last look at the spot where the Porsche had been. It was empty now, ready for the next person who actually needed it. And I couldn't help smiling, thinking, maybe the universe keeps score in small ways after all.